My name is Rosemary Mpambo. I'm a relationship and retreat leader, a relationship coach or love coach, and a retreat leader. I'm fortunate enough to have my work published in major publications like ABC, CBC, Fox News, USA Today. And today we are talking about misguided myths about grieving or healing your heartbreak, healing your loss. A lot of people have said so many things, and I always believe that healing is a personal journey, but don't get stuck in that personal journey. A lot of people also get stuck because they think dealing with their grief is too much for them and they just don't want to talk about it. Anyway, welcome to our weekly show. If you are one of my pros, please put hashtag pro in the comment section. And if you are one of my newbies, put hashtag newbie so I can give you a huge shout out. So as you are tuning in, let me know where you are tuning in from. Right, let's continue. What's the truth about grieving? What is the truth about healing your grief? It's a personal journey, yes, I know, and I'm sure everybody knows that. But why do people always tell fairy stories about healing? Some people say, I don't have time to deal with grief. I move on as fast as Wi Fi. That's what I heard from one lady. But okay, ask yourself, why are you jumping from one relationship to the other? And why are your relationships or your marriages failing? You are always attracting those people that always end you in divorce. Why? Why is that? If you don't have time to heal, your heart heals as fast as Wi-Fi. That's what I heard somebody saying. So these are the myths about healing your grief, or the myths about the misguided myths about grieving. So number one, I'm reading this from my book, Exhume or Heal, A Widow's Memoir, Getting Her Groove Back. And it's on page 44, where we are talking about don't bond with your widowhood baggage. So the first misguided myth is mourning shouldn't take less than a year. Okay, mourning should only take less than a year. A lot of people mourn, right? There's a difference between mourning and grieving. When you are grieving, you don't shed tears, but when you mourn, that's when you cry and let your voice out, expressing your pain. So when you're mourning, some people can mourn for a long time depending on situations. So we should bear in mind that there is never a limit placed on grieving. This is a personal journey for everybody. But mourning is about you shedding tears. How long are you going to be shedding tears? A lot of people shed tears every time when they think about something. So don't tell yourself that after a year, I'm not going to be shedding tears. Time will come when you are triggered by something. I still shed tears for my parents that have been gone. My dad has been gone since 2003, my mom since 2017, and my brother 2019, and the other two brothers earlier than 2008. I still shed tears time and again, especially when I'm at a funeral or I see other people grieving, or I see something that reminds me about my parents, and then I miss them. When I miss them, yes, I will shed tears, but it doesn't mean that I'm going to go, uh, uh, you know, crying all over the place and throwing a fit. No, They are what we call silent tears. You know, you just sob. Sometimes you don't have to go, no, you sob. It means tears will just run down your cheeks, but quietly. So look around and see how much your grieving has affected other people. Are you going to be grieving all the time? Are you going to be no crying all the time? In Shona we say kuridza mere. Uchagara uchiridza mere here mazuva ese, kana kuti when you grieve, kana kuti when you mourn. There's a difference, as I said, between mourning and grieving. Right. Myth number two: not crying out and wallowing in your pain means that you are really not grieving. Right? This is not true in the real world. Most most of these situations are forced on widows, because when you are at a funeral, especially when your husband has died, they expect you to be wallowing. Wallowing is crying out loud. They expect you to be wallowing, they expect you to be throwing a fit, but this is not reality. Sometimes other people, especially when your spouse has died, now I'm talking to widows. When your spouse dies, cry with your one eye open, because I've seen widows that start to wallow in pain, and then by the time the funeral is over, a lot of the treasures in the house have disappeared. People pretend to be helping you to pack stuff in your bedroom, and then in the meantime, they are stealing your valuables. So you need to be careful, even at the funeral of your husband or your wife. I'm also talking to those that lose parents when you are young. The relatives might come in and they will try to steal valuables from you. So it doesn't mean that when your parents die at the funeral, you have to be throwing a fit. You have to cry with your one eye open, because things will disappear. And people say, "Oh yeah, she wasn't even crying uh, at the funeral of her husband. It means that she was okay with his death." No, sometimes you don't have to do that. Other people grieve inwardly. They cannot really shed tears in during the time, because remember, this has just happened. Every person deals with grief in a lot of different ways, and grieving, people grieve in different forms as well. So shedding tears or wallowing in pain, it doesn't mean that you are grieving and you are not grieving. All right. Number three, sometimes you must show that you can hold it together while grieving. Yes, other people pretend that they can hold it together. Yes, you can hold it together for a while, but you need to let out the pain. Well, good for you if you can, if you can grieve in style. Yeah, I call that grieving in style. Yes, some people cannot wallow in pain, grieving, throwing themselves on the floor and doing all the crazy stuff. Some people are composed when they are grieving. um, it also depends how you were raised. It also depends uh, your status in the community or in life. If you are a prime minister or a president or a CEO of a huge company, you are not a, people are not going to expect you to be throwing a fit even when your husband has passed away, because that's just not expected of you. And sometimes, yes, you cannot do what people expect you to do. You have to do what works for you. So don't grieve like everybody else. Do what works for you. But my advice is, don't lose yourself or your dignity when you are at a funeral or when you are mourning or grieving the loss of your loved one. There are no set rules in grieving. So all these misguided myths about, well, you should wake up in the morning, you should not take a bath, you should look dirty, you should look scruffy to show that yes, you are mourning the death of your husband. I know in some cultures that that's what they do. They look at you to see if you are bad, you have makeup on, and if you are like that, then it means you are not mourning the death of your husband. No, cleanliness is next to godliness. You shouldn't be filthy at your husband's funeral, because I'm sure your husband wouldn't want a stinky widow next to his casket, right? So, take care of yourself. Don't allow culture. Sometimes these cultures were created uh, ancient years ago, and some of them were created, so that women or other people in the community um, are abused by that. Look at your culture and see if the rules in the culture are serving you today. Because if they expect you to be wallowing in pain, throwing yourself on the floor, well, is that okay with you? Is that dignified? And your kids will be looking at you throwing yourself on the floor like, okay, seriously, even if culture expects you to do that, time has moved. Things are no longer the same. All those rules were created by people that have gone a long time ago. And some of them are rules that are created by a system that wants to hold women hostage to grieve, hostage to grieving. So be careful what culture you are following. Be careful also how you are going to conduct yourself at the funeral of your husband, because there are other people at that funeral that are just there to see how you are behaving, how you are carrying yourself, how you are conducting yourself, even if it's your child or your brother that has passed away or your parents. They want to see how you are carrying yourself. Of course, don't be too classy, doing all these fancy things at the funeral of your husband. But nowadays, things have changed. People now get well dressed when they are at funerals. People wear hats, people wear fascinators, people wear heels, and people wear beautiful black suits, and go to the funeral well dressed. They're smelling nice and they are looking good, but they are grieving, they are crying, they are mourning the death of their loved one. So do what works for you. Uh, Number 4, the last myth I'm going to talk about is starting a new life after a loss means you are ignoring or forgetting the death of your husband. That is just a myth that was imposed on widows by culture, because they expect widows, especially in our culture, not to get married, not to have boyfriends within the first year or 18 months, until they have a ceremony to cleanse you and give you the freedom that now you can start dating. But most of the times they won't tell you that now you are free to date. So it is up to you, to respect the death of your husband. Yes, you will need to take time to grieve the loss of your husband. And a lot of the widows nowadays, they take time to nurture themselves, to nurture the children, especially when children are involved. You cannot bury your husband and then you go straight into dating. No, you have to wait for a while until you are okay with dating, until the kids are also ready to meet somebody new in their life. Remember also, the kids have lost their dad, so you can't, jump into another relationship. No. but give yourself time to mourn. But it doesn't mean that if you have started dating within a year or two, it means that you don't respect the death of your husband. No, that's a myth, because your husband, even if he is gone, he will still hold a special place in your heart. So thank you so much for joining me today. And I hope you have learned a lot about the misguided um, myths about healing your grief or grieving. So don't let the society impose cultural beliefs on you when they are no longer serving you. So thank you so much. Hope you got value from today, and I will see you again next week. Remember to book a free consultation with me if you need any help with grieving the loss of your husband or the loss of your parents. I can take you through a proper healing process. And even if when you want to prepare to find love again, I can help you go through the grieving process and give you tools to overcome all these limiting beliefs and all these misguided uh, myths about grieving and healing through the process of your loss. Thank you so much. I will see you again next week. Bye bye for now.